Alright, let's get this over with. Alrighty then, my roll of chums. It is I, Daniel. You may call me the Pop Culture Dude, and let's get straight into it. This is, once again, another movie review on the brand new Tom and Jerry movie, which is right out in theaters and HBO Max. And now, just to let you know, this review, from what I'm going to say, is going to be 100% honest. There's going to be some positive things and some negative things I have to say about it. So there'll be some good stuff, some bad stuff, and then I'll get to the conclusion of it. And trust me, when I get to those honest review stuff, I'm going to lose some subscribers, I'm going to get dislikes on this video, and then I won't get no respect anymore. But other than that, so even during the anticipation of most of this movie, for those of you who haven't heard, this movie is getting terrible reviews. Like, they don't like the characters, they don't like the story, they don't like the script, and I'm like, what did you expect? I mean, it's a live-action animated adaptation of Tom and Jerry. Anything else that you could expect something special in that? No, but is there a single way? Are the critics right about it? For me, somewhat, I kinda agree. Alright, before you point out your guns or your pitchforks or your knife by saying, "What? You hate it, Daniel?" Hold your horses right there. Just take a chill pill if you like to. So, either way, I just want to mention that, my thoughts on this movie. There's some people that says, I love this movie. There's some people be like, yeah, it's okay. It was mediocre. Oh, this movie's trash. I hate it so much. Well, technically, I watch it with my friends, Trevin and Dwayne, and these are their Twitter accounts if you want to follow them on Twitter as well. So I decided to watch them together in a Discord chat. Yes, I do have Discord if you're interested to ask me out. I can just type in my username in the comments down below. So as I was watching the movie with my friends, we were having a hard time to watch down the sit through. But for right now, before I get to the negatives, let's talk about the positives. Let's start off this something good at least. Anyway, I have to give props to director Tim Story and pretty much the entire crew, the animation development team, of making Tom and Jerry and every character in the 2D traditional animation that we see from the cartoons from the 1940s to right now in this day and age that we're still living. Because Tom and Jerry's been around for a very long time with a bunch of direct-to-television movies, cartoons, you name it. And it's great that for this live-action animation movie, they decide to stick with that. And one of the best things about it is, at least Tom and Jerry doesn't talk, but we will get to that. There are a couple of words that comes out from their mouths, but other than that, nope, they don't talk like the last Tom and Jerry movie. But in a way that it's a good thing, like how their 2D animation style like transitions with the physical slapstick comedy that really, I have to say, I think the filmmakers and the animators put their hard work and effort on making the possible from how they would transform and be like suited in the environment in this live action world. So I gotta give props to that. And there are some similar things that you do. Yes, you get the iconic Tom scream that goes, or ah, you get that. And then you get to see other fan favorite Tom and Jerry characters such as Goldie, Spike, Butch, which sadly half of them don't get that much screen time, but at least they're a little bit there by saying, hey, they exist. But there's one of the things that I would question that one of my friends eventually questioned by saying, how come every single animal in New York is animated without any explanation? I mean, if you look back at the previous live-action animated movies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Looney Tunes Back in Action share a similarity. Like, okay, these are cartoon characters, but they're treated like actors in Hollywood as they're treating around in the human world. While in Space Jam, it's a difference. Like, okay, there is a toon world buried underground in a golf course burrow where Michael Jordan gets leaned in. But for Tom and Jerry, there's like no explanation to that. So I'm like, okay, guess that happened. But at least the animation is a bit top notch. So I definitely like that. They nailed the slapstick comedy, but also the expressions of every character as a whole. So I gotta give them props to that. So yeah, that's what I really like about the Tom and Jerry movie. I like the poster and I like the title and the actors themselves. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to talk about the live action actors. Obviously, we got Chloe Grace Moretz, and I'm gonna get hate for mispronouncing her name. Basically, she plays this character named Kayla, who basically just moved into New York and basically try to get a job to be part of a hotel, and that's where Tom and Jerry eventually moves in. Like, it just came out of nowhere, but there was like no proper introduction. But you see the classic Tom and Jerry, just the game of cat and mouse, and then you see some other actors like Michael Pena, you got Colin Jost from Saturday Night Live, and then you got this guy who says the iconic gay meme. So yeah, it's a good thing that you got some nice celebrity cast members. So it's a good thing that they have a good time. They did have their moments where they get to share some amazing screen time with the other characters. You really want me to get to the negative stuff, are you? Okay, for those of you who are hardcore Tom and Jerry fans, so I'm just gonna say this, like, if you love this movie, that's great. That's just your opinion. But now, that's pretty much one of the only good things I would say. And if you're not gonna be a biggest fans of my negative criticism on it, I think you should stop watching this video right now and don't come back to this channel again. So anyway, and it's gonna get to spoiler territory, so let me get to that. Here are the negative complaints about this movie, and dare I say it, this movie is not perfect in a way. And the reason why I say that it is because this movie had a similar issue from what Scoob had. Scoob had the issue of, let's set up a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe where it just doesn't feel like a true proper Scooby-Doo moment, except there's like itty-bitty parts of that. Tom and Jerry felt that the same way, but I think it's a little bit worse. And you're wondering, why is that? Why do you think it's worse? They look so great in the 2D hand-drawn animation in the real world. What could possibly be so bad about it? Because when it comes to live-action animated hybrids, sometimes the human characters can take away the spotlight from the animated character where you just feel like, oh man, this plot could have been fitting for an HBO Max original and just don't involve Tom and Jerry in a way. Like, they focus so much about this Indian wedding party where they basically put the mainstream about Kayla about getting a job with Terrence, who's played by Michael Pena, who was pretty enjoyable in the movie. But other than that, like, as much as you got these celebrity guest stars appearing in this movie and it seems like they're having a good time, but it just takes away the spotlight that Tom and Jerry themselves don't have like a proper goal, except Jerry decides to spend a night at a hotel and decides to crash in the party where Tom's about to go away, as he doesn't want to be left alone away in the alley or being chased by a gang of cats or a bulldog. So Tom just wants eventually just want to be in a place where he matters. But for Jerry, Jerry is a straight up a-hole in a way. Like, the way that he just mistreats Tom, like the way that he wanted to have this job to get rid of Jerry when he gets hired by Kayla, it just doesn't go in a way where Jerry causes the mayhem and the troubles around the hotel, from crashing to multiple, I don't know, buildings, like in the same place, from window to so much damage around the place. Even at the wedding party, the same Indian wedding party where Colin Jost and his fiance is in the movie, I'm like, okay, is this supposed to be a somewhat reference to Nick Jonas and his wife in a way? I don't know, I just thought about that in my mind. But proper at the beginning, it just goes up with the where these rapid pitches just come out of nowhere. I'm like, oh great, I'm expecting a bird poop joke that's about to come up. But that was the one thing that just didn't feel really necessary, because I thought in the trailer where Tom and Jerry are about to hug each other, where they have the song, you can count on me, I'll be there. But that scene was not in the movie, because I thought that would have been a nicer introduction. It just goes straight from Tom playing the keyboard and the piano, and then Jerry decides to mess it up so he can just cause mayhem and just piss off Tom's day. And I'm like, why, Jerry? Why have to be so hard on Tom? I get it that he's a cat, and obviously cat chases mice, but at the exact same time, you don't have to be that hard on him. And trust me, he does. Because technically, during one of the times where they cannot stop playing like a rap hip song, I'm like, more and more, and I'm like, oh boy, I understand why they play these songs. You gotta be hip. You gotta be youthful to this. Like, yo, what up, player? And that's why they just play it after time after time after time. Be like, this does not fit for a Tom and Jerry story. I get it for the general audience and for the Gen Z kids today that likes that music genre. Sorry to be biased, but that music is not my taste, and it just doesn't fit Tom and Jerry in my opinion. So I just thought that was way too distracting. And another of the cases, they just keep replaying these songs over and over and over again. I'm like, make it stop. The silent choices, they suck eggs. But other than that, like, I really like the fact that Tom, like, there were some scenes that stand out, like the mousetrap. I definitely think that was a really good scene from how Tom displays of how he's gonna trap Jerry, or at least he caught him. Like, okay, that is classic Tom and Jerry right there. And that's what I just eventually want to see more of. And there's some moments where they kind of repeat the gags, where there's like this tornado twist where Spike, Tom, Jerry, or even the animals at the wedding crashers, they come in and they just go to the it was fun, but it was kind of a little bit like getting satire in a way. So that's why I just thought it was like pretty old. But the one thing that really suffers the problem from the movie, for what Crick says, yes, the plot and the script itself is thin on ice. I think the actors did a fine job for what they're giving, but there's some certain lines, and dare I say it, some certain jokes I'm like, ugh, that wasn't funny. That was kind of cringy if you ask me. Why the flying knots? And I'm like, that, okay, you just gotta put a pun like that, like, but it just doesn't make sense. And also from the other Tom and Jerry characters, they sometimes show up like in one scene together, and sometimes they just oftenly like split up. But some of them are half like voiced by celebrity cast members. Some did well, like the voice for Spy Guy prove it. But some like Butch and others, I'm like, I don't think it wasn't the best casting choice. But I kind of understand because gotta pay for the general audience as well. It's not just you want to sell the brand from the actor or the character being cast. It's just that you just need it just to be a part of the production. That's all. But other way than that, it's just that this movie has a plot that just doesn't feel as strong as it is. It just feels flat on concept from Tom eventually want to play the piano, and it would have been a nice opportunity where they would have referenced that old Tom and Jerry cartoon, if you know what I'm talking about, where he's playing the iconic music that goes but no, Tom decided to sing a hip-hop song so he could be a simp to this female white cat named Toodles. Is that the name of it? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. But anyway, you know that Tom has always been a simp. Every Tom and Jerry cartoon, and especially one of the last ones where he didn't get the girl and he becomes depressed, which in the movie they did acknowledge that meme. So I was eventually just satisfied if that happened. But other than that, it just doesn't have a pretty good proper flow for what does they want to take. Like, oh, we have this Indian wedding. Hey, I'm trying to get this job. Oh, Tom and Jerry are just chasing each other by playing cat and mouse. And then after when they eventually got fired, the hotel's a disaster. The wedding is a disaster. It's like, oh no, what's going to happen? It's a predictable cliche plot 101. And I'm like, okay, I kind of feel like that the writers are just trying their best from what target audience that they're trying to do. Because when the Tom and Jerry characters disappear off screen and just focus on the human characters plot, which doesn't feel like a Tom and Jerry movie, but more like an HBO Max original featuring Tom and Jerry. I mean, that's what this movie is. It feels like a standalone project, a comedy like movie that stands out of its own, and you slap the brand Tom and Jerry like you find it in a Happy Meal toy box or in a kid's cereal box in a way, just to market the brand. And that's what I'm just saying, like, why do this like plot in a way? Because I was expecting Who Framed Roger Rabbit meets Home Alone 2 in a way, if that makes sense to you. But sadly, if you compare it to this movie to the others, I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem as good as a whole, because yes, you do have Tom flossing in a way, you have more of the rap songs, you eventually got some more satire jokes that doesn't just land so correctly. So that's what I'm just saying. I just think that the script could have been a little bit more thicker and just not thin on plain ice in a way. And that's why to see like this movie, I could definitely tell it's trying its best to relive the nostalgia for people who grew up with the old Tom and Jerry ones, but also for this new one. But in a way that I just think that this movie is directly just made for kids, and I understand that, but I've seen so many good kids movies in the past that can be more fun and enjoyable for all ages, for an instance, like Sonic as an example. But this movie, this is just the perfect example of that. And when you're making this hotel/India plot, I'm like, make that somewhere else, but don't take Tom and Jerry out of the spotlight. I mean, there's some points where some of the characters do get to have their screen time and get to be a part of the plot, but whenever they're unnecessary by these other subplots where it talks about the hotel businesses or eventually the wedding about to be crashed, and I'm like, okay, I don't think this wasn't a good idea to put this as a live action Tom and Jerry movie. And I know this is going to be a big nitpick. I wasn't a big fan of how the cinematography looks. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm watching a 2021 movie. It feels like that mid-2000s, early 2000s era of cinematography. Like, you know what I'm talking about. When you see it in other live-action movies such as Garfield or Alvin and the Chipmunks, it has that, like, bland lighting that it doesn't, like, full flesh out, like, in a good HD quality. So that's why I was a little bit distracting. I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of glad that I watched this movie on HBO Max instead of in theaters, because I would have wasted my $20 on it. But watching it with my friends, they hated this movie, and I don't blame them for it, especially for the critics. But I'll definitely will admit that this new Tom and Jerry movie isn't entirely good, and it won't satisfy every single fan. Some will love it, some will hate it, some will think it's ass, some think it's mediocre. To me, it's more just like, this Tom and Jerry is just more for the young kids of our generation today, not for the ones for the past. Like, it's not just made for the old school Tom and Jerry fans. Like, I mean, there is, like, with a couple of nods, but for the majority of it, it's more for, like, what our kids are into nowadays, and that's why they decided to put it in a movie. And that's one of the things I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if I wasted my time or was it worth my time watching this movie with my friends. And I'm like, first off, Scoob failed that by being less faithful to the adaptation, and Tom and Jerry wasn't truly that faithful at all, and that's why I just go back to the old cartoons or the other movies, and I'm like, I prefer those better. Plus, if you're still interested for new Tom and Jerry content, watch the new shorts, and I did watch after the movie. I'm like, that's what the movie should have been like that tone and that essence. But I mean, they had it, but it was just sprinkled in, and there just wasn't enough of it. That was just like my biggest criticism about it, and it's going to disappoint for some people who has seen it or eventually still hasn't not planned to see it yet. And like I said, it is what it is. Like, I can love something that you hate. You can hate something that I love. Opinions are subjective. Like, there's no, like, you're right, you're wrong. That's why opinions are big. Like, how many writing argument essays that you wrote in school? That's why they're there for you to learn as well. So anyway, by pretty much my overall thoughts for Tom and Jerry, there's some points where every character is a complete a-hole in a way, like pretty much to each other, where they have that sense of unlikability, where I'm like, come on guys, can't we all just get along for once? Which they kind of did, where like, oh, we just gotta bring this woman who eventually decided to dump her fiance, now we gotta bring her back in a way, and be like, well, that's what we kind of expected when it comes to stories like this. And that's why I'm like, I feel like that Tom and Jerry, it has the charm of what makes the characters from the cartoons whenever it comes to their physical comedy, the way that they act. Well, most of them, but not so really. But when I look back at Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that's a good movie, just because not just how they blend humans and characters together, it's the strong written direction of the story and how it's written like it's a detective murder mystery type of movie. Space Jam, it's not a perfect movie, but it definitely has its unique flow of a sense of not just for nostalgia, but in a sense that people will find that pretty much memorable, but also rewatchable at the exact same time. Heck, I can say the same for Looney Tunes Back in Action, which is pretty underrated and my favorite Looney Tunes movie that I liked it more than Space Jam. Especially when I was watching the Tom and Jerry movie, I couldn't stop help by quoting Daffy Duck in my head by saying, you know, this is absolutely a spy car because it looked absolutely nothing like a spy car. Because I was thinking like, I kind of missed that. And due to the criticism what Scoob had in this new Tom and Jerry movie, I'm like, oh no, I am so scared for Space Jam: A New Legacy, because from what I've seen, it looks good, and I want to see a trailer. I'm like, I want this movie to be good as well. I don't want to feel depressed, because after watching this movie, I'm like, dang, I feel bummed out just because this movie, it could have been done so much better. And when you try to make a Tom and Jerry movie, it kind of sucks from the last Tom and Jerry movie we have and the new one. It just can't focuses on the main central character as a whole. Like, yes, you could still have your human characters, you could still have your celebrities portraying them and interact with them. You could still do that. It's the right direction and the right written script, but also the exact same time know what you are showing your audience to, like who is it targeted for. Like, you want to make your movie to appeal to everyone instead of just some certain audience, because it could be one of those movies that I'm like, oh, as a kid I like this, and then 10 years later I'm gonna be like, man, I kind of regret liking this as a kid. And that's how I feel. So that's how I personally feel about it. And honestly, I did feel bummed out. I'm like, dang, now I know how Tom feels after when he hits his depression days. Because I'm like, wow, I can't believe it that I just felt a flow that just feels so negative. And people, no joke, they were encouraging me to make a movie review on this. But since this is my first negative critique type of movie, that's I'm just like that. And it's like, why does this has to keep happening to me? Now I know how Scooby-Doo fans feel when they eventually watch Scoob, or when Batman fans when they watch Batman Robin, or Jurassic Park fans when they watch Jurassic Park 3. I mean, I was kind of okay with these movies, but you fancy geeks revenge me, the Revengers. So, in conclusion, should you go see the new Tom and Jerry movie? Look, I like Tom and Jerry. I eventually enjoy like most of the cartoons when I grow up, and I kind of wish that there was like some other things that could have been improved and actually make it more like a stronger movie instead of just like it is what it is in a way. And that's what I'm saying. Like, obviously they have so much opportunity of this live action Tom and Jerry movie to appeal to everyone, but sometimes it just doesn't work for people for like me. So that's what I'm just saying. So for those of you who have not seen it yet, if you feel so attached that you just don't want Hollywood to ruin your childhood again, then don't go see this. Don't do this to yourself. You already made your decision. You're gonna be like, well, that movie exists and I'm not gonna go see it. But if you do want to see it, that's your choice. It'll be like, I don't care what the critics say, I'm just gonna follow my own opinion. I don't judge a book by its cover. I'm eventually gonna see this movie with open eyes, whether I love it, whether I hate it, or if I'm in between, I'll do that. And if that's your attitude, then good for you. Then maybe that's what you should have done when you eventually go see this movie. And technically, that's what I was thinking, like, pretty much in my head, but it just dropped down, like, most of the moments that I keep on watching it. So if you're interested to see the movie, tune into HBO Max and subscribe to it, for those who live in the United States. Or if you want to see it in theaters, if you have a family or if you have a kid to watch it, then maybe they'll be interested. It's the perfect turn off your brain type of movie. Just don't take it seriously. Even if there's some things that doesn't make any sense, just turn your brain off. It's just fast food. It's junk food that you shouldn't be eating every single day, but it's more like, I'm just gonna have it once, but it's not that healthy, but there's some quality taste to it. And that's what I'm just saying. So, for those of you who are having divisive opinions about the new Tom and Jerry movie, it's okay. You can have your opinion, like, hey, I enjoy this movie. Hey, I do not. For someone to like something and to someone to not hate something. Because if you don't believe me, follow me on Twitter, read my comments, and ask me all the questions. Because there's people who like and there's people who hate the same thing. We two were friends to the end. How come they didn't sing that in the movie? Ain't we, my friend? We come back together. Oh man, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. Oh man, I'm sweating underneath this cap. I'm going a little bit insane. I'm not joking to you guys. That movie literally just made me take crazy pills. And I'm like, why can't I go watch season 2 episodes of Close Enough? Or, I don't know, go to Target and go buy an exclusive Tails Funko Pop from Sonic the Hedgehog and make a video just, why do you people keep doing this to me? I'm done! I thought fans who eventually will appreciate cartoon animation to be on the big screen and be satisfied by it. Not being mad all the time about stupid crap. Ow. Oh, my back. So, if you're planning to go see the new Tom and Jerry movie, just let me know down in the comments and... this is ridiculous. Everything about this is ridiculous. It's just... a movie billion-dollar studio that are just trying to revamp their own IPs and just try to appeal to younger kids of today's generation, but also appeal it to the adults who grew up with those cartoons and decide to put some celebrity casting choices because, like, hey, I know this person. I'm eventually going to be excited for the movie. And then we're just freaking losing our minds just because they just do things that are just unfaithful to the source material or not that strong direction to it, all just because it just happens in the Tom and Jerry movie. So yeah, that's my honest opinion. If you have seen it, let me know what you thought about it, but if you haven't seen it, are you interested or not? Just let me know down in the comments. I really gotta reevaluate my life after watching that movie. I'm just gonna end off with my outros. How was it go again? Oh yeah, take care now, bye-bye then, and oh, whoa, I almost dropped the camera. Anyway, you guys have a good day, stay safe.